All right. Bonjour tout le monde. J'espère que vous allez bien. Ici Ford, directeur artistique de Ford Movements. Je suis avec vous pendant quelques minutes. J'inviterai mes panélistes à allumer leur caméra. Voilà. Rebonjour, mesdemoiselles, rebonjour, mesdames, plutôt parce que mesdemoiselles, on n'utilise plus. Donc, très brièvement, juste là pour présenter, après je disparais. Donc, ce qu'on a voulu faire dans cette conférence-là, c'est vraiment donner carte blanche à Femmes Phénoménales. Je pense que elles sont les spécialistes vraiment dans tout ce qui touche la place et l'évolution de la femme dans le street dance. Puis, on ne saurait pas mieux mettre les mots qu'elle sur vraiment tous les enjeux qui touchent vraiment à l'évolution des femmes dans la scène du street dance. Puis il y a quand même tellement de facteurs qui entrent en jeu. Donc, pour présenter brièvement, Christina, je te laisserai corriger si je fais des erreurs. Pardonne-moi, je te dis pardon d'avance. Donc, Femme Phénoménale est née vraiment d'une initiative, d'une vidéo qui avait pour but de promouvoir la diversité féminine dans le street dance. C'était une vidéo qui a été produite suite à l'initiative de Taylor Impel, qui est une cofondatrice de Femmes Phénoménales avec Natacha Antoine. Puis de cette vidéo-là, s'est développée justement cette envie de briser justement les stigmas et les stéréotypes qui peuvent parfois limiter ou porter atteinte justement à la place de la femme, non seulement dans la société, mais dans le street dance. Et à travers cette initiative-là, s'est bâti le collectif Femmes Phénoménales qui, depuis quelques années déjà, travaille de manière ardue à créer un système beaucoup plus équitable et égalitaire entre les hommes et les femmes et autres personnes et communautés du street dance. Ça va, je pense que j'ai bien dit, OK. Je vous annonce que la conférence va être va être en anglais et en français. Libre aux panélistes de choisir le langage de leur choix. Donc, je vais faire une petite transition vers l'anglais pour refaire un peu l'introduction. Donc, Femme Phénoménale is like a collective that's born from an initiative of Talia Rempel, who is a co-founder with Natasha Antoine. The first project was a video project that was built to promote diversity when it comes to women and street dance culture, street dance in general. And from there, the project led on to different other projects like Yoni Cypher, where they would try to break different codes and stigmas and stereotypes that we have as men, as white men, towards women, to actually create a more equal dance scene and make sure that everything is just and everyone can strive within street dance and Black culture and everything that comes from it. So without further ado, I'll let Christina keep on going, and I wish you all a good conference. Hope you learned something from those four wonderful beings that are going to share experiences, knowledge, soul with us. And that being said, I'm out. See you all in an hour. We'll have the questions. Don't hesitate to put your questions in the chat, and then we'll go through them in an hour about. All right. Je te donne la parole, Christina.
Merci, Ford. Ford a très bien résumé qui nous sommes. Mais j'ajouterais à ça que depuis notre événement qu'on a fait en 2018, Yoni Cypher, qui voulait rassembler en fait les voix des femmes dans le hip-hop culture en général, donc pas juste dans la danse. On est devenu un collectif multidisciplinaire qui veut promouvoir la place de la femme dans toutes les sphères du hip-hop. Donc, le hip-hop, ce n'est pas juste la danse, c'est les arts visuels, le graph, le chant, les MC, les beatmakers, la danse aussi. Donc, c'est ça, on a plein de belles femmes parmi nous. Ce soir, par contre, il y a des danseuses et Sam qui est aussi une MC chanteuse avec nous. Donc, j'ai envie de les présenter, mais en même temps, je les entends parler. Fait qu'on va briser la glace ensemble. Je vais commencer par me présenter, puis après, je vous interpelle, les filles. Moi, c'est Christina. Je suis aussi une street dancer, hip-hop walking. Mais dans le cadre de Femmes Phénoménales, je suis une chargée de projet. J'essaie du mieux que je peux de lancer des projets aux filles, de mettre de l'avant ce qu'elles font en tant qu'artistes individuelles, mais aussi de bâtir des projets de groupe. J'aide à hoster les sessions qu'on fait habituellement hors COVID. Donc, des sessions de danse qui rassemblent toute la communauté. C'est hosté par des femmes, mais c'est vraiment là pour rassembler toute la communauté dans notre espace qu'on crée qui est ouvert à tous, qui est décomplexé, qui est libre, qui met de l'avant la simplicité d'être soi-même, puis de chacun individuellement prendre sa place. Parce que c'est aussi ça la mission de Femmes Phénoménales. Au-delà de briser des stéréotypes de sexe et de genre, c'est aussi d'inviter à chacun à s'empower puis à prendre leur place, autant les femmes que les hommes, puis peu importe le genre auquel tu t'identifies, en fait. Donc, voilà mon rôle sommairement dans Femmes Phénoménales. Samantha, do you want to go next?
Yes, so I'm Christina from here. So yes, I'm Samantha. I go by Sam I Am. Also Shayla for those in whacking. I guess you could say I do many hats. I've been doing hip hop dance for a long time, at least 25 plus years, if not more. As well as with whacking, kind of like, I guess, out of that whole genre, a little bit the newest, but again, I guess a good 14 years. When it comes to hip hop, I mean, I've touched a bit with obviously music. I sing, I'm an R&B singer, soul singer, but of course touch on different things, especially working a lot with people in the city. Those who know Montreal is very, very multi-talented with amazing artists. I work with, I'm at Charlie Can at the moment where I work with youth. There's when I started teaching dance and also more, I guess, one-on-one basis or more connection with the young women that used to come there through different styles, hip hop, dance hall, anything that I guess could touch and communicate the message. And I don't know, I think through the arts, naturally, we tend to be very flexible and knowing that there's so many arenas that can be used with this sort of tool. So I guess this has kind of been my life, I guess, path in that way. But to make it short, I dance, I sing, songwrite, and currently making music, but again, also helping hopefully with youth and young adults. So that's been my main focus at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. That's a pretty good summary of a pretty full life. Yannice, tu es la prochaine à te présenter?
Oui, merci. Alors, bonjour tout le monde. Moi, c'est Yannice. On me connaît sous le nom de Vilain, aussi Junior Taminator. Je suis présentement danseuse de crump, mais j'ai commencé ma carrière de danse en tant que danseuse de hip-hop et popping. J'ai fait partie du Ladies Popping Crew. Présentement, je fais partie du Box Ones, qui est le premier groupe de crump féminin au Canada, créé par ma mentor Valérie Chartier-Taminator. Et ouais, ça fait maintenant, ça va faire 10 ans, en 2021, que je fais du crump. Et puis, je me spécialise là-dedans depuis les dernières années, en continuant à pratiquer mes autres styles, mais c'est vraiment ma spécialité pour le moment. Et je fais partie du collectif Femmes Phénoménales depuis sa création. Et puis, c'est ça.
Thank you, lady. And la prochaine et non la moindre. Puis là, je réalise que j'ai menti parce qu'Anaïs, c'était pas juste une danseuse, c'était une multi-talented woman. I'm sorry that I put you dans ce créneau. Comme, who am I to talk? But present yourself, boo-boo.
Hey! Hello, people. I am Anaïs. I go by Rise. I'm an artist. I like to dance. I like to write. I like to draw. I like to paint. So yeah, I love to move. I go by Rise. And well, just in terms of presentation and forms, like through which I find I express myself most is hip hop, house, and Vogue. I'm a part of the Kiki House of Campbell, the Montreal chapter. And yeah, so I've been dancing mostly hip hop. It's just what I grew up around, so it's what I've been eating. And I found about the dance community and the dancing in Montreal and developed and grew there within, I guess, the last 4 or 5 years. So it's been like quite a discovery and also self-discovery of also my own personal baggage that I have and that I grew up with, and also my personal heritage. So that's been a continuous journey. And yeah, I've been a part of the Femmes collective for the last year. So that's been fun to also try to plan around and also connect with different women and also just bring up certain ideas and yeah, bring up certain discussions as well.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for joining us. Yeah. Alors, pour vous mettre en contexte de la conversation que j'ai développée, en fait, on voulait pousser la conversation plus loin parce que Femmes Phénoménales d'abord eu une conversation à travers le premier vidéo, comme Fred l'a mentionné plus tôt, entre les femmes, comment on se sent dans cette scène, dans cette communauté. Ensuite, avec une deuxième vidéo, on a ouvert la conversation à nos pairs, à des hommes. C'est une deuxième vidéo où est-ce que chaque femme était paired up with another dancer, that was a male dancer. Puis, ça nous a permis d'emmener la conversation plus loin. On a eu des panélistes, on a eu des conversations difficiles mais nécessaires sur la relation que les hommes entretiennent avec les femmes, ce que les hommes laissent aussi comme place aux femmes dans la communauté. Ça, c'était il y a 3 ans, si je me trompe pas. En 2018, vers la conversation à d'autres femmes aussi, des différents médiums, savoir hey, dans le graph, comment ça se passe, et dans la musique, comment ça se passe. Ouais, donc le but de cette conversation est vraiment d'aller plus loin, de continuer à parler puis à voir comment on peut continuer à prendre notre place dans la communauté. Donc, la première question que j'avais développée, c'était de parler de l'affirmation de soi et de la confiance en soi. Par affirmation de soi, là, ce qu'on parle, c'est vraiment le sentiment d'être un individu qui a une valeur, puis que tu puisses être capable d'exprimer tes opinions, tes pensées, les besoins. Dans cette communauté, de savoir comment chaque femme qui est ici, justement, s'affirme, puis prend sa place, comment ça se vit, cette relation avec soi-même et s'affirmer en tant qu'individu qui a de la valeur autant que les autres. Puis, côté confiance en soi, c'est comment vous vivez le fait de croire en soi, de croire en ses capacités, de croire au fait qu'on a du potentiel et que nos skills, dans le fond, nous emmènent. Comment vous vivez avec cette confiance en soi, c'est dans la scène. So in English, for those Anglophones out there, how do you live with self-confidence and self-affirmation? How do you express it in the scene? How do you live it in the scene? So just your relationship, basically, with those two concepts. Who wants to start? I don't want to put you on the spot, guys.
Okay, well, I'll start it. The first thing that comes to my mind really is, I guess, hard work. I don't know, I think just in general how I deal with things is like, you know, you do the best that you can, and no one can really dispute the hard work that you put in. So again, like, I mean, you know, obviously that's not always the case, but I think that's the first thing that that came to me every single time if I wanted to do something, go out there. It was like, okay, I got to put in the work. And I guess in my own way was my security of being like, well, I'm doing what I had to do to be recognized or be taken seriously for. And I think, I mean, there's no guarantee, obviously. You know what I mean? Because people are going to see what they want. But that's the first thing. When I first started dancing, I mean, I started really young. So I feel like maybe in a way, I was lucky in a sense where I didn't have the so much of a self, like, how do I say, when you're young, you're kind of free of things.
Doubt?
You're just, yeah, like you're just kind of like, you know, when you're 5, 6, 7, you know, and you're doing something, you're just doing it. You're not thinking about what people are thinking. You're not thinking about what, you know, is this good? Like, oh, you know, like I'm a girl, like, you know, you don't really think those things right off the bat. You're kind of just like, I'm here, I'm good at something. I like it. I love it. I have fun. I'm with my friends. And that's kind of the mindset. So in that way, I feel like, and that's why also too why I push, I don't say I want to push, but why I'm so adamant when I'm speaking to young people, because it's like that moment is so precious of like the innocence and like the explorative, you know, because when we get older, we can be explorative, not saying like that's gone, but it's usually a lot harder to kind of break in that shell of like being curious and being really open to trying new things. So for me, like there was that, but I mean, like anything as you grow up, you know, you are faced obviously with, you know, since we're talking about being a woman, you know, that did come up, but I feel like because I started younger and was already like, my mindset was like, I'm gonna just do it regardless, that did help. And it's like, I think it's also having a good system around you, right? You know, like, you know, you want to make sure that, I mean, you know, I can't, it's, you know, you would hope that everyone has a good, firm support system, whether it's their family, their parents, or at least great friends. Because I think those things as well help, you know, your self-confidence as well as yourself. But I mean, if we're speaking about like really starting off, you know, fresh and you don't really have like, you know, it's not like you can really see yourself as a mirror yet, because you're just kind of doing things and just hoping things work out. I think those things do play a part, you know, just to start off that.
Si je peux continuer, je sais pas si tu notes avec quelque chose à...
Vas-y.
Ouais, OK. Ben, en fait, pour continuer avec l'idée à Sam I Am, justement, qui disait que puisque tu as commencé jeune, il y avait un petit peu moins ce self-awareness or ce self-doubt or whatever you had at that age. Contrairement à moi, où quand j'ai commencé le crump, j'avais 15 ans. Et ça a été tellement difficile pour moi, l'affirmation et la confiance en moi, jusqu'à, en fait, je dirais récemment, là, ça fait pas si longtemps que ça que je me sens affirmée et confiante dans ce que j'exprime dans ma danse en général. Et par le fait d'être une fille qui commence en crump dans un monde de garçons, où ce que le seul exemple que j'avais, c'était Taminator, qui était la seule femme qui faisait du crump à ce moment-là, qui était pour moi ma plus grande inspiration. Et encore aujourd'hui, pour ce qui est de l'affirmation, ça a été difficile, mais comme tu as dit, c'était beaucoup de hard work, mental and physical hard work. Et c'est c'est un travail que j'ai fait dans ma danse, mais qui m'a juste complètement aidée dans ma vie au complet, dans tous les aspects de ma vie, là, de pousser ces barrières-là, ces limites-là, pour ce qui est du crump, surtout dans ces âges-là, là, de l'adolescence, 15, 16, 17, 18. Donc, oui, ça a été beaucoup, beaucoup de travail personnel, mental et physique, mais ça en vaut la peine parce qu'aujourd'hui, je peux me dire, je me considère confiante et j'assume et j'affirme ce que je fais et ce que je suis. Puis je sais que c'est le fruit de tous les efforts que j'ai faits depuis mon début. Et évidemment, le fait d'avoir une mentor, un système autour de moi, comme tu disais juste avant, toutes les inspirations alentour, c'est sûr que ça a fait partie de mon évolution, c'est certain. Mais ouais, c'est ça. Je trouvais que c'était beaucoup en lien avec ce que tu disais justement, là.
Ouais, merci. Anaïs, do you want to jump off of that?
Like, I think what's interesting and comes up a lot within that is, you know, the timing in which you come into, say, the dance from your own personal, say, age development, right? And I'll say also for me, like for me too, it was mostly towards my teens. So it's a moment, say, in my life where I feel like, well, I felt more vulnerable. I felt more, in a way, yes, gullible to what I see around me, but also like there was so much that I needed to grow from and so much I needed to heal from that I didn't even know. And that's that continuous also work that like it's not just say that the hard work, when you say hard work, it's not just like the hard work like I'm drilling this thing, I'm gonna get it, like it's gonna be clean. It's like there's more to that. There's also that whole self-discovery, like why am I upset? And why do I feel like I need to get this right now? And there's, you know, there's so many layers to justement this hard work. And I find that, you know, through growing through that, in that at that time in my life, it really allowed me to also reflect on all the things also I go about in my life, and how do I choose to express myself? Why am I repressing myself? Why do I choose not to speak up in certain situations? So it allows for me to dig in deeper into questions because I have to do that process when I have to express. So it allows me to do that just with myself and also in anything that I do. And in terms of affirmation, de soi, that's like it really comes from you. How would you choose to also express into a space? And like I'm not someone that, well, I used to not be as like speak, like I would not speak like you. I would just be in my corner, I do my thing. Like it's not like, you know, depending on the situation I was in, you know, like a lot of us get bullied, and you know, and it's like to come into face and then choose, okay, well, how do I also have something to say? How do I put that as valid? And how do I also let myself be, in a way, beginner and grow from things and then kind of evolve into doing something, if that makes sense. So like kind of accepting all of the stages and not just saying, well, it will only be valid when it's, say, perfect or when it's good. There's also value in that whole process as well, right? So I'll say that, and especially when you say support system, that kind of derives from the question, but goes with what you were saying too, is that well, especially in Montreal, what I find for me is that there's so many strong women like everywhere, and I guess also for me when coming into the scene, it's like, you know, especially a few years ago, there's so much work that's been done into the scene itself as of when, say, I came in. So I'm surrounded by such a balance of very powerful women leaders and very powerful also men that also share that space. So you do see that there's work that's been done, and also brings interest to your own personal support system and also the support system and how it's structured within the scene itself.
Yeah, I don't think je pense pas que ça dévie tant de la question, parce que dans le fond, I think from women taking space, puis qui s'affirment, puis qui aient confiance en elles, je pense que c'est ça qui fait que les futures générations vont pouvoir faire comme, hey, I can take my space too. That I think it creates a wheel of how women will be able to build confidence and like build like self-affirmation and be like, yeah, I have my space in this community. So no, I think it linked super well to the question. So thank you for adding that. And what I hear, go.
I mean, I just wanted to add to what I was hearing, especially when, and I guess, Anaïs, when you were saying too about coming young, and also Yannice, like when I'm thinking about trying things, I'm not only thinking about dance, even though we're all dancers, and we think very like, okay, obviously that's I guess the main use in terms of art that we're using. But I mean, when I say trying new things, because sometimes it's just about the idea, the spirit of really just exploring, and whether it be different arts, where when you do come to dance, I think you naturally tap into that, okay, I know how to tackle this, like I know how to implement this when I want something and I want to work hard. So it's not necessarily meaning that, you know, because you started at 15, like, you know, there's like, you lost all this like time, you know what I'm saying? And like, even going back to like, you know, Anaïs also like, for real, like, you know, it's like the scene has changed, like, let's even say 10 years ago, you know what I mean? Like, let's say 15 years ago, let's say 20 years ago, you know what I mean? Like, definitely. So I know we're gonna probably go into that, but I just want to like, kind of add a little like, you know, because it's really relevant, you know, to what you guys saying.
I agree with you. I think it's important to name it, and it's okay. It's because the scene has grown, and I think it's thanks to people who were able to be comfortable with themselves and be like, okay, like we have our space here, women have their space here, and that growing as a community. And I'm just taking it all in and trying to see if anyone wants to add anything on that question before I move on. Let's take a turn. All right. So I think I'm frozen.
Yeah, you froze for me.
Can you guys hear me? Why?
Yeah,
okay.
You're good.
All right. Yeah. All right. All right. So, la prochaine question, c'était de parler des croyances qui peuvent nous limiter. Par ça, je veux dire que ça soit de notre éducation ou de la société ou des expériences, des échecs qu'on a vécus. Qu'est-ce qui vous affecte, des croyances que vous avez peut-être développées, peut-être que genre tu te dis, ah, je devrais faire ça, mais tu ne le fais pas. Comment vous travaillez à surmonter ces croyances-là, puis éventuellement, justement, build cette confiance en soi? C'était ça ma deuxième question. Sauf si vous pouvez nommer quelques-unes de ces croyances et comment vous travaillez dessus.
I'll say for me, en termes de croyances, you know, often it's really we just bear a little bit what we see in society, and it's like, you know, like in terms of especially body reappropriation, I'll say that's something that strikes strongly mostly for me, especially when you want to dance, because your body becomes your tool, and it's still something you want to voice, but there's so many ways that you're told, or you grew up being kind of framed into like, should kind of be where you should fit, and this is how you should be placing yourself, this is how you should conduct yourself. Conducting yourself as such makes you this, and it's direct, like, you know, links that are being made. And so it's to kind of untangle this, say for myself, it's also untangle this and also see to which extent do I really think that like, oh, like me actually appreciating like how I move and using my own personal sensuality leads me to this. To which extent do I choose not to express myself fully because I'm scared of what people will think, or because I'm kind of like, I made it normal for me not to say to the full extent, or not to show to the full extent. So I find that these are things that, especially in doing dance, or just even like paint, anything actually in general. These are things that I find are limiting because they're a bit sets of beliefs that we don't see. Like we don't see them right away because they're so ingrained in how we actually built our own selves, that's also like, you know, side work that you do on yourself, and also really actually digging in questions and questioning the self as well.
Yeah. Anyone else wants to go? Yannice?
Ouais, ben oui. Ben en fait, tu as vraiment mis les bons mots sur comment, sur les enjeux pour moi aussi, ce que j'ai vécu par rapport à mon expérience, qui était aussi basée sur ce qui est considéré féminin et ce qui est considéré masculin. Ayant grandi dans un style qui est considéré évidemment plus masculin, et je sais qu'il y a d'autres styles comme le b-boy, c'est un petit peu la même chose. On peut ressentir cette énergie-là qui est plus masculine, agressive, qui est un petit peu moins associée à la féminité. Moi, ça a été ça beaucoup, mes enjeux dans mon expérience, pour finalement me rendre compte, ou en fait travailler sur le fait que ma féminité m'appartient et est pas dictée ou est pas limitée à ce qui est socialement démontré ou whatever, accepté. Au contraire, la façon que je vais la travailler, bien, ça va travailler sur ma confiance en moi, qui va faire juste glow ma féminité finalement à ma façon, tu sais. Fait que je pense vraiment que c'est des choses qui sont, comme tu dis, Anaïs, tellement ancrées, ou qui ont été tellement ancrées en nous, que des fois, en fait, pour moi, au départ, c'était difficile de me battre contre ça. Mais ça a été beaucoup avec le support de mon groupe et de mon mentor, et de voir justement toutes les femmes fortes de la scène à Montréal, avoir été capables de le faire, and to assume themselves, and que ça m'a vraiment juste inspirée, puis ça m'a montré que wow, I can do it too. Comme j'ai pas besoin de fit in some sort of, you know, to feel good. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like you guys touched a lot of great points. For me, it's like when I think really when I started, like half the things that I guess, you know, now is celebrated weren't really celebrated at all. It was almost like a removal of femininity. When I was starting to do like really be serious about hip hop and like battling and all these things, like I mean, it was like baggy clothes all day, every day, sneakers, like, you know, you would never even think to, when you're freestyling, to do any like feminine movements or anything, because that was kind of like, you got the impression that was kind of like you're using your prowess for something wrong, like you're trying to be seductive. But it's like, it's just a part of life and it's a part of nature. And the same way men could be sexual and it's kind of very celebrated, you know, when they're like, oh yeah, this is me. You're not like, oh, you're too sexy, like get away, you know, you're just kind of like, yeah, that's right. You know what I mean? It's assumed. And I speak generally, obviously, because, you know, I don't want to put all men in a box or anything like that. But, you know, these things like me doing like a nice body roll and winding down wasn't necessarily going to be welcomed 15 years ago, whereas now, because we're now being exposed to so many, you know, different cultures and different ways of life now, and it's more acceptable to see these things, that now when we do it, it's like no big deal. It's not like, oh my God, you're being so sexy. It's almost like, oh, you're sexy, great. Like, cool, move on. You know what I mean? Like, you're allowed to have to be how you feel, and that's okay, and people move on from it. But I feel like that also comes with, you know, these social norms that were back then. You know, it wasn't normal to see that, and when it was seen, it was, and when we think of women and sex, it's like we think also commercial, not commercial, but we see it as something selling. We see things, we don't see it as a thing, as you said, like confidence in yourself and just feeling good about yourself. We always see it has to do with some end goal or something, and it's like that's not really the case. It's just like an expression. We're all, you know, if we're gonna talk about sex, like we're all sexual beings, so it's all about just, you know, expression, and of course, you know, reading the room and feeling if you're safe about it and stuff like that. You know, but me personally, when I first started, that was something that was not really encouraged, because I wanted to be taken seriously. I wanted to be like, I can hit as hard as a guy, like, period. There was no like, oh, I'm a woman. Yeah, I know I'm a woman, but like, if I'm gonna come into something, we gotta be like this. And I don't say like I encourage that, to be honest. Like it taught me a lot of things. It taught me to, I guess, in some way be tough. But like, again, those moments, it's like, it's when it's needed, not being tough all the time and denouncing like who I am because I got to show them tough all the time. You know what I mean? And, you know, it's like, I knew why we were doing that. You know, I knew why I was feeling that way and how come, and how I was addressing myself in those situations. Now, you know, is that relevant to me now? No. You know what I mean? It's, and I think it also comes with the whole, you know, social awareness of everyone that's surrounded, like, you know, because dance, you know, again, art, dance is like also a reflection of what's happening outside. So if people are more generally open to, let's say, dance hall and twerking, all these things, you know, you doing it in a cypher right now, it's not a big deal. Whereas 10 years ago, 15 years ago, be like, oh, you're trying to be this, you know what I mean? Like, oh, what is that? You're being like a little crazy. Like, and it's just like, yo, people have been doing it for decades. You know what I mean? People have been doing it for decades. It's a cultural thing, some of the time. And it's like, you know, it's like, then it's about also open the mind. So it's for me, it's like, I'm happy, you know, that we're at least coming to this kind of realization. And one of the things I want to point out, like, you know, because again, like, I mean, you know, bringing up, for example, like the first time, like, Whacking came in Bust a Move, that was like the first time that you really saw feminine energy in that way, like coming in to a street dance event, you know, in a way. I wasn't there everywhere in the world, but I'm going to say this in terms of Canada, for sure. Like the energy of the room switched completely, you know, because people took that space. You know, I'm not saying it's the only time, but I was like, I think for me, it was the first time in a spotlight like that, where people were just like, whoa, like, oh yeah, this person's sexy, but it's not like, oh, this is entertainment. Like I can appreciate this. I can see it as an art form and not necessarily see it like, oh, they're trying to be, you know, girly and like, what is she thinking about? You know what I mean? It's like, yo, it's an expression. It's just like art, you know? So yeah, that's something that, again, and that was what, 11 years ago? You know what I'm saying? So yeah. This is the timeline that we're in, for real.
Yeah. And I want to touch on, before we go to the next question, just because it came up a lot, like how the community and dance helped define your femininity for yourself, because I hear a lot that that discussion between feminine and masculine energy, and I'm just curious if you feel comfortable, like it's not a question that I had prepared, it just, I think it's interesting because I hear those terms a lot, and I know it's something as women that we grapple with, la dualité de l'énergie féminine, de l'énergie masculine, qui commence à l'aider à former votre identité de la femme, puis commence à continuer à vous aider à forger votre féminité, tu sais, puis comment le street dance puis la communauté a influencé votre perception de la féminité pour vous. Je suis curieuse. Je sais pas si c'est clair.
Ouais, non, c'est clair. Pour ma part, en fait, c'est personnellement, pour moi, c'est d'arrêter de le voir justement comme une dualité dans ma tête, dans le sens où we have both and you need to accept it and you need to embrace it and you need to assume it. Et comme Sam l'a dit, les énergies, mettons, comment je peux dire? Il y a des moments où que ton énergie masculine va plus ressortir and it doesn't mean that you are more masculine. The next day, you will feel sexy and that's fine. You know, comme c'est juste d'arrêter de se dire « Ah, mais non, mais je serais pas censée faire ça parce que je suis une femme, je devrais pas je devrais pas m'installer comme ça ou je devrais pas parler comme ça ou I shouldn't be, you know, dressed like that or we need to stop fighting between femininity and masculinity parce que c'est pas ça qui nous définie en tant que femme. Moi, c'est vraiment au moment où j'ai accepté les deux côtés de moi que, au contraire, je me suis sentie encore plus femme parce que je me comprenais plus. J'avais beaucoup plus confiance en mes capacités physiques et mentales et c'était beaucoup moins d'énergie perdue à vouloir comprendre ou essayer de modifier ou essayer de fit or whatever, you know. Fait que je pense que c'est vraiment de juste apprendre à se connaître nos énergies à nous and just go and dig into it. Puis, ouais.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I like just how you bring up, and that's totally how I would have said too. It's like, it's not necessarily a distinction, it's just a continuous balance. Like it's not, it's really just a continuous mixture of balances that we all have. We have a whole spectrum. And I think in some way, it's very, in a way, binary, the way of thinking of, am I more feminine, am I more masculine, when in reality we are really just complex beings and we have all of the flow of energies within us. And what I find interesting also in a bit, I guess, facing different spaces, so like say a street dance community and more ballroom communities, really seeing how, say, in ballroom it's like there's really a praise and there's also just kind of this exposure to the extent to which you're just allowed. And then just coming into street dance where it's a bit more, I guess, depending of also like the spaces, there's more masculine energy present. And then I find that there's more kind of distinction of masculine energy, feminine energy. It's like kind of coming down and then really realizing that, you know, we have really a lot of all of those things. And that, like, you know, for yourself, it's also to find like, you know, what brings what out of you, and not just like, adjust it to the people in the space, but really kind of adjust it to yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Sam, did you want to add something?
I think they've definitely explained what, you know, feminine and masculine energy. I mean, we all have it. So, I mean, there shouldn't be a fight within ourselves, you know. It's just that it's how we're programmed. We're always programmed to like have one over the other or have one against one another. And I think the only thing because they've explained it quite well, very well already, is that you know, it's also about the relationships that we have with, you know, our own people and as well as the opposite sex. I think that also plays a big role, you know what I mean, in essence of just like, as you said, like if we're all aware that we all have this, then, you know, we shouldn't necessarily feel like there's some sort of discord, you know, when it comes to you know, really having this connection of like why we're here, because, you know, we're all doing the same thing, we're all enjoying the same thing. And so I think as anything, when we're also aware of things, I think it's naturally going to have that balance. You know what I'm saying? You know, as I said, I feel like I've known dancers now and before, and we've grown, you know what I mean? And that comes with maturity as well. And that comes with experience. And that comes with the idea of like, yeah, actually, you know what I mean? Like, it's not just about doing things and I got to do this and I got to have hard work. It's really about understanding and listening to yourself and feeling out the environment. As Anaïs said, you know, there's different spaces, you know, and different ways of communicating, you know what I mean? And I think that, I feel like that all comes down with the maturity, the journey that you're going through. It's like, it brings you to that place of like, yeah, I have this and I have that, because again, you know, we all have a bit of go-getter in us, you know, but we also have the reflective, you know, and staying in touch and being in touch with ourselves, you know. That's not a feminine, to say feminine or masculine thing. It's just like, this is what we have. And so I think that has a lot to do with too, is the relationships and seeing each other for who we are is a big thing, you know what I mean? And I think also too, it's about growth. As I said, there's moments where when I was younger, yeah, I mean, there's things that I probably done or they've done to me and male, female circumstance that we didn't agree with. But, you know, to go back 10 years later and be like, yeah, we could see eye to eye is a question of maturity and understanding that we have these elements in ourselves too. So it's yeah, I feel like it's definitely a growing prospect there.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Oui, vas-y.
Si je peux rajouter aussi, en fait, cette dualité-là, c'est aussi ce qui m'a permis de me rendre compte de ce que je suis aujourd'hui, dans le sens que to have been through this fight got me where I am today, where I know myself better. So, je pense que c'est normal de passer au travers ça pour une jeune femme, une femme, peu importe l'âge, en fait. Mais je pense que c'est juste de voir ça avec une perspective où ce que there's growth and it's just about finding balance, comme Anaïs elle a dit, puis d'accepter tout ça comme un tout, en fait. Puis je pense que c'est ça, la bataille fait partie du processus aussi.
Oui, merci. Merci d'avoir répondu à cette question un peu impromptue. La prochaine question, puis ça, on en a déjà parlé un peu, c'était beaucoup le rôle des mentors dans nos cheminements, que ça soit même dans le rôle de comment tu t'es développée en tant que femme ou comment tu t'es développée en tant que danseuse, en tant qu'artiste. So how the presence of a mentor or the absence of a mentor, for them to be either man or woman, how that helped make you who you are today. So if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Je peux commencer. Pour ma part, j'ai eu un mentor en Crump qui est Valérie Taminator, qui, honnêtement, et je le dis totalement ouvertement, I wouldn't be here without her, that's for sure. I would have been somewhere, but I don't know where. Mais surtout par rapport au style dans lequel j'étais, comment je me suis sentie, les batailles que j'ai vécues. Elle avait une expérience évidemment beaucoup plus grande que la mienne, une maturité beaucoup plus grande que la mienne, qui a fait que j'ai pu passer au travers toutes ces étapes-là avec elle. Puis, ça m'a vraiment, vraiment permis de me rendre où je suis présentement, vraiment. Parce que ça a été difficile pour moi, justement, pour toutes ces étapes-là de figure out, like, masculine, feminine, if this is my place or not. Est-ce que je suis assez forte physiquement ou pas? Est-ce que je suis assez forte mentalement ou pas pour faire des battles contre des hommes? Est-ce que, tu sais, il y a tellement eu de questions dans ma tête. Puis des fois, elle n'avait même pas besoin de parler, puis je la voyais danser ou je la voyais faire ses trucs, and I'm like, yeah, I can do it. You know, like, if a woman can do it, I can do it. So, puis elle a été beaucoup là pour moi aussi, fait que elle a eu un rôle très important dans ma vie et dans ma vie en tant que danseuse que je suis aujourd'hui. Puis, ouais, c'est ça. Mm.
So I guess I feel definitely mentors play a big role. And I would say mentors in different things, in different aspects of my life that also played, you know, that also, I guess, could say help me in dance. I've had male and female mentors, and again, had very different experiences with that. I think for me, with my male, when I think of male, my male mentors, there was a bit of, I think, slight conflict, but not conflict in the sense like, you know, you want to argue or anything like that. I think, again, like when you're dealing with people, you're dealing with their issues, you're dealing with your issues, you're dealing with the communication, you know, where we're coming from mentally and emotionally. So, so I feel like those sort of experiences made me a little bit, had to make me tough. Like it made me kind of be more assertive as a woman because, like, for example, I had a mentor when it came to, when I was singing gospel, and, you know, the idea of women in the industry and the idea of women, you know, the idea if I have a boyfriend could be a question of like people scrutinizing me getting pregnant. You know, imagine me getting pregnant and I'm in gospel, like those ideas of like, you know, because as a woman, you know, it's so much more, you know, grave, you know, it's so much more like, oh my God, like this is happening, you know, like, is this, you know, is she gonna last, you know what I mean? Whereas if it's the opposite of in the male counterpart, like if he has a girlfriend, like what's the big deal? You know what I mean? So these were actual ideas that were brought to me. It wasn't something that I was like, oh, I'm making up in my head. Like this was a discussion that was brought up. So from a young age at like 17, 18, I was already faced with the idea that I was different in the sense that as a woman, I had to prove myself extra hard. I had to prove that, you know, I was here to stay, you know, that kind of thing. And that was music, you know, and so I think those sort of experiences, I guess, pushed me to be a little bit more like, okay, well, I have to be assertive, or I have to make sure that I know what I want. So I don't have people tell me what to do, or think that I don't know anything, or I'm not experienced, therefore they can move me around wherever they want. And it feels very like, oh, this is so tense and so whatever, but it's funny looking back, like those were the things that were brought up. And, you know, I do appreciate them still, because it's not like I'm sitting there and being like, oh, you know, that was a messed up idea. That was a messed up experience. Like, why did I go through that? Blah, blah. It's just like, that was the time and that was the reality. And, you know, and, you know, that's the way they were able to, I guess, communicate that. But yeah, that was an experience, you know. Is that the only male experience? I had good positive male experiences, of course. But just the idea of how that is shown in those different sectors of art, you know, and I was 17, 18, and it was just like, I don't know anything about the world. Like, I just want to sing. I just want to make music. I just want to, you know, be, you know, this, you know, and so that was something that did come up. Whereas the women that I've had in my life, you know, either was more of like family world, and I felt like that really played a big part for me. And she's like my godmother, who is a lot older, you know, and that also I thought was very important for me, because it just gave me the confidence in general of you know, giving me the value of who I was, or just saying, you know what, you keep doing what you're doing, like this is great, like, you know, or you need help, I'll help you, like. And I think, you know, when we think mentor, for me, I see it as a whole aspect too, of like, you know, anything that can help you in your life. Even if it's not anything about dance, it's still going to touch dance, because if you're about it, then it's just going to affect it in that way regardless. But I would say, and those times too, like there was times where it was tough, but I feel like there is a different aspect and different way of how things were translated for me. But then again, these also were older people and come from an older time and an older generation. So I can't say that if I had a discussion with someone my age or younger, that would be, if he's a male, is that gonna like be the same experience? You know what I mean? So there's so many things, but I think it's very important to have a mentor because, it's, even if it's hard or not, like, I think you can use that and kind of shape what it is that you want from your experience or where it's going to go. And of course, it comes from the heart, even if it's hard, when it comes from the heart, when it's not from the heart too. So it's like, again, it's about knowing when the criticism or the message is from the right place too, I think is also important.
Yeah, sorry, my internet cut. Anaïs, did you talk about the subject yet?
No, but no, like honestly, I mean, I can just say for myself, I think, yeah, like a mentor is for sure, it's not, especially if we, speak of dance, let's just start there. Like, it's not just about someone that's going to carry you and help you say, perfect the skill or get something better. It's really also helping you find out about things about yourself and how you also come in to deal with life, and just how can that person also see a light in you, and not necessarily to impose themselves onto you, but to give you the freedom and space for you to discover more of yourself. And I think it's also, what's great also about, like, say, even in terms of male-female balance, is that it also makes that person come into, like, in a way, facing that reality of your own personal reality. So say if it's a male and women, your own personal reality, but also themselves. How do they carry their own energy? How do they carry their own stigmas? And are they putting them onto you, or are they carrying it, within themselves? And I think it always goes both ways. And so it's always important, because that's just how things kind of, develop and chain down, is that, especially when Sam says, like, say, older generations, like, okay, but as a good mentor, it's also having that space to receive that, say, you saying something like this puts the person into that space, because otherwise we're just repeating traumas, and then we're just repeating, the same boxes over and over again without realizing. And then it also goes back to the work we were saying initially. It's like, say, as a mentoree, person being mentored, I have to do some work. And as someone that's mentoring, there's work to be done also in just understanding, to give space for someone else to grow. And I think that there's a beauty in it, and that's how things can, develop and get passed down as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Sam, did you want to go?
I just because what adding on to what Anaïs was saying is like I, knowing that I've done it for a couple of years, like either through work or just obviously teaching and whatnot. It taught me a lot. It taught me definitely a lot of patience, and as she said, like, understanding what it is that you're actually giving, because again, you want, obviously as a mentor, you want the best, you want them to have the best, but what is the best, you know what I mean? And what is the best for them, and what is the purpose of, the idea of, like, again, like, having them be on their way, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's a lot of deep questionings, because it's like I had to learn that patience. I had to learn that, and I think that's really important. And I think it's like always trial and error. Once you do it, it's like you learn so much about yourself and what it is that what's so important to you, and to give space for that person to actually develop it, I think is also very important, which again, just adding to what Anaïs was saying, because it's definitely a learning process and growth. As a mentor, it's like I had to learn that through a lot of things. So I do agree.
Yeah, and I think it's humbling also for a mentor to accept that position of student also while you're teaching and passing on the knowledge. Before we go on to the public this question, avant qu'on passe aux questions du public. J'aimerais vous entendre en quelques phrases, quelques mots sur, selon vous, c'est quoi le futur pour la femme dans la communauté, ou c'est quoi les sujets qu'on n'a pas encore parlé, qu'on tiptoe around, qu'on devrait se call out en tant que communauté, puis dire, OK, this is still an issue, guys. Let's talk about this. Nah. It's a hard one. Yeah.
Je pense qu'on peut se poser la question de how do we prepare the next generation? Puis ça, je parle pour tous les styles. On a une façon de fonctionner en Crump, justement, où on a des familles, donc on a comme nos little homies, puis genre, on prépare un peu le futur, si je peux dire. Je trouve que c'est une belle façon d'encourager la génération prochaine à mettre autant d'efforts que nous et que ceux d'avant nous. Hein. Fait que je pense que c'est une grosse question qu'on peut se poser ou trouver des façons, comment est-ce qu'on peut bien préparer la prochaine génération. Yeah. Ouais.
Yeah, I like that. Parce que je pense que c'est une responsabilité de communauté, qu'on peut pas... On est souvent porté à être sur notre pratique à nous, sur comment on évolue en tant que danseur. Puis là, c'est comme, no, but a community is not a one-person job. It's not a few person's job. It's everyone's person's
job.
So.
Everyone's. And it's much more than, yes, there's teaching, but it's much more than that, selon moi. Fait que je pense que ce serait des questions à se poser en tant que artiste, point, danseur, présentement. Ouais.
Thanks. Did you guys have anything else to add, or shall I go to the questions of the public?
I mean, I feel, I think that we've been progressing in an upward motion, that I don't feel as, I guess, daunted or like sad about the ways of how things are growing. I think that, as we can see, I feel like we're definitely a really good community in terms of like a lot of different styles where we do support each other, even if you're not part of the style, which is very unique. I don't think you see that everywhere else. And I think it could be because, you know, Montreal is like a big city, small village where we can get to point A to point B very easily. You know, it's easy communicating towards each other. And I think that also starts with the fact, like, when these sort of scenes started, you know, it started with a few people, and these few people were also connected with the other few people that were studying other styles. So then that connection, I think, kept along these kind of years, which is really good. And those same people are still in the scene as well. They didn't just disappear. So, you know, I think they also encourage, you know, in a way even though they're not in it, like, you know, unless they're looking at it like a hawk, but they're like, you know, they're still keeping those lines kind of connected. Which is really good. So for me, I feel like we're in a good direction. Me personally, I do agree that yes, I like the idea that as a community, you can't just expect like one, you know, or just, as you said, a few people just, you know, making things happen, where it's such a big responsibility, and that everyone in some way is has an ownership in a way of what they're bringing to the table, and what their roles is. I mean, and I think like, it's all about keeping it what's the main cause, or what's the intention, you know, as long as it's true. Like, I mean, I don't see how that should make it an issue, or, you know, I think this is like why we're here. And I think the communication, I think for me, it's like communication and is just really important. I think I'll go with that because right now I'm not thinking so much more, but I really do feel like we're in a good direction. And
yeah, thanks. Anaïs?
Yeah, and also just to add it, my comment I had to add also goes with the comment in the chat too, is community and personal accountability. I find that it's just also to not forget that it's just a reflection of, you know, how people are in society. And so to also, you know, bring in that reflection of, okay, but how do you treat women in your space? Or how do you treat women that not necessarily you're attracted to per se, but like just in general? And how do you perceive, you know, that energy as well? And how do you perceive it within yourself? You know, that's just, you know, from one perspective, because, or from, I'll guess just one aspect, just because that's what we were talking about, but that goes with like anything. And like, you know, like, I feel like sometimes we kind of like separate those discussions, but really just how, say, people conduct around other people, how people, you know, respect, you know, bring up the notion of respect, respect other bodies, respect other things that you see, but may feel strange to your own personal belief system, but that's still someone else's expression, or that's still someone else's, you know, way of being. It's like, how do you go about judging that within? And then like, it's pushing, you know, also pushing that, those questions. And, you know, how do you behave when you see things happening or misconduct or things like that? I find that often enough that these are the things that, you know, get put like, you know, the blind eye. And it's like, yeah, you know, but if it had happened in this, and there's always an if, but it's also, you know, to, you know, come face to face with that as well, because the people that are living those experiences could also be the same people you're ciphering with. So there's that too. It's to not forget that it's all also, you know, how we act in society, and there's that accountability also to have.
Yeah, I like that. And to add to that, I'm gonna call out everyone in this community and to call yourself out, to realize the relationships you hold with women, to realize the relationships you hold with the youth, and what do you do to add to the community? And what do you do that can deprive the community of certain things and certain people? Do you act in a way that gives a space to people and to women to take their space, or do you act in a way where you t'empêches les femmes de prendre leur place, t'empêches the youth to come up? So call yourselves out, people. And to that, I'm gonna go to the questions qui ont été demandées par le public. La première, Anaïs, tu voulais-tu rajouter quelque chose?
Non, regardez.
Okay. Ouais. La première, c'était lorsqu'il vient au battle, de manière générale et selon les styles, on remarque qu'il y a souvent plus de participants que de participantes. Pourquoi, selon vous, et comment inciter davantage de femmes à y participer? The family battle, are more, do we tend to see more men participate, more men judge than women? Why do you think that is, and why do you think can be done for it not to be that way anymore?
I think, like, first to go with the question, but I do feel like Sam has a lot to say on the topic, so I just mean to say, yeah, like sometimes it's also who's judging, and you know what's that space saying, like we were saying before, you know, with the environment, right? And that's something that, you know, I didn't necessarily fully, it's not always from my experience, it's also from things I've heard from people, and also people like Sam. You know, sometimes it's also to look at the environment, who's judging, and then you know, sometimes it's like the preferences that are being made, or you know, the comments or the energy of the room as well. And yeah, so like, you know, sometimes honestly to think, oh, inclusion in terms of, say, like you know, I'll just stop it there, sorry, but like I'll just say, like, I know that sometimes it's really just the energy of the room as well. Okay, I'll stop it there actually. Sorry, go ahead, Sam. Go ahead.
I was like, you were like starting and I was like, okay, like, where are you stopping? No, yeah, I mean, I feel like, honestly, and I'm speaking in terms of Montreal, I think Montreal, I feel like we're a special place where I'm like, I feel like we naturally, or we just have we just, I don't know, we're like, we respect each other a lot, I find very well. I feel like we're quite balanced. You know what I mean? Like, because I think we generally respect the people that are here, that are doing the work, that are doing the hard work. We do respect the, you know, the opposite sex. Oh, I don't personally feel like, oh, I'm not represented as much here. And I think, as I see in some of the comments, it's like, yeah, it's part of the obviously the organizer to see, you know, like who it is that they want to bring in to also create that space and that vibe as well. Like, you know, because when you are asking a person to judge, you're obviously looking for their judgment and what they're looking for, and you respect their ideas and what they see in the dance. Right. So it's like, you know, and I feel like we have a lot of women, like Montreal has a really great surplus of strong women who've been doing it for years, who are business owners, who are entrepreneurs in that right. Because again, Montreal didn't have a platform back 15 years ago, 20 years ago, in that way that now we can sit here and be like, wow, we have all these battles, we have all these things going on, but it took the person to create it, you know? And a lot of them were women, you know what I mean? A lot of them, because they saw a need, and they saw a need to be filled, and they filled it, you know? So in essence, they brought, I think naturally with that, they brought the people that felt well suited. It wasn't a question of, oh, I need a woman or I need a man. It's just like, it worked out. And I feel like it's always well balanced and well displayed. Overall, I can't say I can't say I see that everywhere else. I feel like New York is the same way too. There's a lot of strong women dancers, and there's a lot of respect for these women too. So I feel like it comes with the community of how they see each other that makes that happen. Where you shouldn't have to feel like, oh, to make it inclusive, we must think of a woman, where it should be natural. It should be like, yeah, she's flipping dope. Like, okay, let her go in. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like because she's a woman, she's there, but she's a woman, awesome. Like, you know what I mean? So it's kind of, for me, I think Montreal, we've been pretty good in that respect. And I think it's because of the people who worked really hard, you know, the people who've been there for so long, that again, now it feels like it's easy sailing, but it wasn't to say easy sailing in the beginning, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of now, it's like we're kind of reaping the benefits, or they're reaping the fruits, let's say, of, you know, this scene that now we have. Because like, you know, Montreal is, I'm gonna always rep Montreal till I die, because Montreal is a fucking bomb. Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? But I say this because we had nothing in a sense, and you had the people who had the minds, who were there to create these things, or have created them, and now we are here, you know, able to do all this, able to have, you know, a community. That's like really what it is. So, yeah.
Yannice, as-tu quelque chose à ajouter?
Ben ouais, si je peux continuer un petit peu sur cette idée-là, je pense que c'est aussi autant que ces femmes fortes-là qui ont fait tout ce travail-là, qui m'ont inspiré, probablement Anaïs aussi, je pense qu'on est à peu près de la même génération, à pousser autant, ben c'est aussi à notre tour de représenter ça pour en inspirer d'autres. And then there's gonna be more and more and more and more. Fait que je pense que c'était juste pour ajouter à ça, là, justement.
I like that, c'est vrai. C'est ça, c'est que nous, là, on l'a eu quand même facile, c'est de ne pas oublier les prochaines qui s'en viennent.
Exact.
Puis, c'est un bon segue pour la prochaine question. Quels seraient vos conseils pour la future génération de danseuses de rue qui grandiront dans un monde post-COVID, puis everything's happening. So, yeah, with the mondialisation, la présence plus accrue de la technologie, la planète qui brûle, so everything that's happening in this world right now, what would be your tips and what would you say to the future generation of women dancers that are coming up?
Je dirais bon, c'est des gros mots, là, mais de rester indulgente envers soi-même et ouverte d'esprit et curieuse. Je pense que c'est vraiment ça qui va faire toute la différence parce qu'en fait, c'est du nouveau pour tout le monde. C'est cette situation-là présentement et qu'est-ce qui s'en vient, on ne sait pas. We don't know how it's going to be, whatever. But it's just to stay together, stay curious and open-minded and wanting to learn and wanting to help. Je pense que c'est vraiment ça qui va faire qu'on va continuer à s'aider puis à s'alimenter. Puis je pense que c'est ça qui va juste faire grow encore plus la scène féminine. Ouais.
One thing for sure I'll say is we have to stay rooted, and that's, I mean, male, female, other, whatever it is, like, you know, we just have to stay rooted. And I find like in the world where everything is chaotic and where even the people that are in position of leadership are not representative or are not, you know, they're not necessarily the most respectful or the most knowledgeable or making the wisest decisions. Like nothing is holding strongly right now, like nada. So it's like to find within ourselves that space of like really rooting ourselves within us, not within the world. And especially in a time right now, and just also just this generation where there's so much that's exterior, and we have access so much to, and I'm doing this because I'm pretending that I'm scrolling on a phone, but like we have so much access. Yeah, actually I have it right there, but whatever. Like we have so much access to what's exterior, and that it's easy to get lost, and it's like this black screen, and it's easy to just be absorbed and have a whole world kind of be represented here when we're actually, you know, beings there. And it's also making that distinction that it's not because, say, like, I don't know, whatever, Instagram followers or whatnot, or because things are being done within certain trends. And especially if we're talking about dancers, it's like, how do I make myself in a way validated? Or then is that your supposed to be your CV? Is that supposed to represent you? But you're a person, you're not a status, you're not a picture, you're more than that. So it's also finding, you know, that space, you know, for the self. Yeah, stay true to yourself, you know, really root yourself and find out, you know, develop and find out more about your own personal heritage, because that says so much. And one thing actually I'll say about that too is that, you know, doing that research also, you know, within heritage, is that one thing that came up to me and just I realized for myself is that I stay curious, say, about, oh, how was it over here, you know, how was your experience, say, growing up in New York, da, da, da. And like, you know, within different elders of different generations or different genres, forms and styles. And then I was also faced with, oh, but how much do I question my own? And not just in terms of, say, dance and style, but like, you know, your parents that are, you know, literally right there, you know, like how much you actually question the situations in which they grew up in, and how much you actually question the situations in which your grandmother grew up in, the actual dances that they did just like that, or things like there's so much within your own personal heritage that we don't necessarily dig into, right? And I find that it's a lot of knowledge, and it explains also a lot for ourselves, and that it can also help us not just within dance but within our lives too. So, you know, yeah, that's that. You know, I'll say for sure, stay rooted. The world is chaotic, but we gotta
stay grounded, stay rooted. I like that. Thanks, Sam.
I'm gonna add to Anaïs what you were saying about the connection, because that's, you know, that's come up in my own personal journey, but also the idea of like, you know, and I guess I'll talk in terms of like hip hop in general, like we forget, like, you know, intergeneration, like there's this word intergenerational that keeps on coming up, because like the communication needs to be there between, I think, elders, or just like, you know, either older OGs. It could be OGs. It could just people who are older in the community. It doesn't have to be always like you know, this huge title, but there needs to be a connection, because if not, then I feel like the culture, the movement doesn't go as far as it can go, because then you're just kind of stuck on a plateau. But even again, when I say that too, is like, again, you know, as we get older, you know, it's just finding a place and a role in what we play in. It doesn't have to be like, as an OG, we're like still battling to our 60 or something like that, or, you know what I mean? It's just the idea that you're visible and you're accessible, you know, because if, you know, I think like, that goes along again with the idea of mentor, right? Mentor doesn't necessarily have to be the person that's with you for like 5 days a week, you know. It can just be like they're there, and you know, if you have a question, you can ask them, you know. And I think that's really important, you know what I mean? Because and you need individuality. You need, as a young person, to find your own way as well. You need to figure out what it is that is you. What you bring to the table, of course, like, you know, you have the tools, you obviously learn from, you know, a person or different people in terms of the movements and all that stuff. But I think having that link between the generations help your own personal heritage, but also the heritage that you're sharing with everyone else who may come from other places, but you're sharing an actual culture together. Right? So it's like a culture within a culture, you know, and then you're bringing your own personal touch, you know, to that experience. And I think that's what makes the community get stronger and stronger. And also that makes it inviting for new people to come in too, right? Because if they see something thriving, you know, and people are just glowing and like, you know, there just feels like there's this exchange. I feel like that also helps people feel like there's something to go towards, you know, where it's not just about taking a dance class, right? And then, okay, it's like, now after the dance class, where do I go from here? Where can I go? Who can I speak to? Who can I connect with? How do I see that in myself as an artist? And an artist, again, as a dancer, you know what I mean? So I feel like more and more that connection is so important. You know, in all. So then again, because the whole point is that you want the culture to continue. You want that when you're gone, it's still functioning and alive and well, and that you have, you know, the people next in line are the ones that are like making it, you know, and holding it down. So I feel like seeing in that way helps also the idea of like, again, not just having you by yourself. It's kind of like, well, no, this is a culture that needs to be flourished, and so everyone has a good time, you know?
Yeah, thank you for that. It's true. And one last question before we finish this very enriching conversation was, do you think freestyle, embodied practice, and hip-hop based education can actually be a tool to change the way people interpret gender and sexuality? Est-ce que le freestyle ou le type de pratique qu'on fait là à travers le hip-hop puis l'éducation du hip-hop, ça peut être une façon de changer la façon que le public ou les gens interprètent le genre et la sexualité? That's an interesting question. Do you guys have anything to answer?
I guess, unless Anaïs, you wanna, okay.
Oh no,
No, go ahead.
I'll just say, I think freestyle is just important in general for the expression of anything that needs to be expressed. I think that it can go there. And I think when you're thinking of freestyle, I think me personally, it's like, it's almost just a letting go of like, you know, without having to think in that term, in so much of a heavy term, but this is probably what is happening. You know what I mean? And I just feel like freestyle is just really an expression of what, you know, with again, how your body moves naturally, what you're listening to, what's going on, that's just going to come out whether or not you're thinking about it or not. And I think these are just tools of empowerment, of like knowing like you can actually create something that is coming from you inside, as opposed to like what you're trying to copy or trying to do whatever. It's really just you interpreting. So for me, I see it as just a freedom. You know, if I'm going to say it, you know, and you can take it how you feel with that. But for me, it's like, because again, we don't ask ourselves how can we say, like, we don't ask usually ourselves, how do we move naturally? So already there, when you ask people to freestyle and they've never freestyled before, and I'm sure you all had that experience, you know, it's the hardest thing in the world. You know what I mean? So already there is, you're like, it's like an empowerment movement there just from doing that. So.
Mais je pense que justement, par cette liberté-là, justement dans le freestyle, dans l'expression, tout ça, je pense que justement, ça peut être utilisé comme outil et comme exemple dans la société d'arrêter de définir les genres nécessairement par rapport à ce qui est visible ou par ce qui est exprimé, justement, parce que je trouve qu'il y a cette richesse-là dans le hip-hop, dans le freestyle, qu'il y a moins, qu'il y a moins ces, comment je peux dire, barrières-là d'identité, où ce qu'il y a plus de liberté, justement. Fait que je pense que oui, ça peut être utilisé dans l'éducation de la sexualité, même c'est ça, des genres, en fait. Ouais.
Merci. Anaïs?
Yeah, and I also to add is it's the acceptance, it's the way it's received too that will allow for that education. So like, because the freestyle is really just the person's expression. So can expression be used as a tool to educate? Of course. It's just, how open are we to listen, and how do we say, sorry, I can't find the word, but you know, how exposed are we to that understanding? So like, will I really receive her as her, or do I see her as the box of what I think movements like the entitled? So there's so much also, you know, to break within the self of just like also accepting within the education that for sure can be used, just like anyone telling you their own story, because it's actually the same thing. Anyone telling you their own story, you know, how much are you actually working on how to listen? And I think that's a big part of education also through dance, or just community spaces, is that we're not alone and everyone has their own stories. So, you know, how much do you choose to learn from that is also how much do you let go in terms of, you know, barriers and boxes that you created for yourself too.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, like you said, it's not only the way someone shows you who they are through freestyle, and it's also the way it's received. And I think that's why it's important to keep talking and communication. And we said, and we brought it up. And I think this is an example of how we can teach. Like, this discussion is another way of how we can teach through hip hop. We're talking about hip hop and we're talking about this culture, this community, but you can't just dance it. You have to stop and reflect about what you're experiencing, what you're seeing. Fait que je pense que c'est mon segue pour vous remercier pour la conversation, puis merci à For a Movement, puis pour l'événement, puis Kairos, puis pour toutes les conversations que vous faites dans les 4 derniers jeudis. Je pense qu'en tant que communauté, on a besoin de ces espaces, on a besoin de se dire que yeah, we can talk about this shit. I'm sorry. We can talk about this stuff. And we need to talk about this stuff. Parce que si on n'en parle pas, on ne peut pas avancer, puis on ne peut pas mettre en mots toutes ces choses qu'on vit, puis ces choses qu'on essaie de comprendre dans nos corps, puis à travers notre corps. Donc, voilà. Ford, hey, ça paraît. Voilà. Merci, Ford. Merci, Anaïs, Sam et Yannice.
Merci.
Merci à vous 4. Merci à tout le monde d'avoir assisté à la conférence. Je pense que tout a été dit. Donc, encore une fois, j'aimerais remercier ces 4 artistes de nous avoir donné l'occasion justement d'en apprendre plus justement sur la communauté féminines et leur approche et leur vision et leur réaction et leur environnement. Puis je pense que il y a vraiment un besoin de plus en plus de se conscientiser sur tout le monde. Avant, c'était les gars, on est cool de notre côté, donc on ne se pose pas de questions, puis c'est la norme. Donc je pense que là, avec l'évolution justement de la conscience collective, je pense que c'est bien que justement on se renseigne tous, puis qu'on en apprenne et qu'on, comme vous avez dit à la dernière question, c'est vraiment l'ouverture, c'est Anaïs qui disait ça, l'ouverture à l'expression des autres. Puis je pense que ce qui fait le cœur du student, comme vous l'avez dit, c'est le freestyle, mais s'il n'y a pas cette ouverture-là, il n'y a pas cette communication-là, il n'y a pas cet échange-là. Donc, merci beaucoup à vous quatre d'avoir fait partie du festival. Et à tous les participants, je vous donne rendez-vous jeudi prochain, 18h30, pour notre dernière conférence avec Spicy, Bruce et Kenji, animé par Axel de Sans Luxe. On ferme la boucle en beauté. In English, so see you all next week, next Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Full Circle with Spicy, Bruce. And it's going to be hosted by Axel from Sans Luxe. So that being said, thank you everyone. Take care, stay safe, and see you all soon.
Merci.
Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup.
Bye. Bye.